Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. A packed show again. I'm going to start off with this. Just try to accept we are in paradise when we are seeing and understanding something new. Our God should be change. Our religion should be understanding, and searching for the truth is our greatest social challenge and purpose. An important thing to remember. But with a fear-based background attached to the alt media, lots of promises of mass arrests, indictments racking up faster than American debt, talk of the Dems creating havoc regardless of an election result, food shortages, ballot cheating and carnage pursuing, and then we have the talk of doomsday planes. And some people call our show negative. The media ask who won the vice president debate, yet forget to add triality to the answer. The answer is no one. The real question is who lost with the debate. The answer is we the people. We had two very unpleasant shows in the past week, where two alt media channels currently operate as divide and conquer the people, so to fulfill their own ends and, it seems, egos. But this tactic plays directly into the hands of the control system. And it's easy to get carried away with the emotions of it all and allow yourself to absorb it and not observe it. We were warned it would get ugly at times this year, and clowns with their ritual sacrifice ceremonies increasing this month, and then at the end of the month they get the children to call in the demons to wreak more havoc just before the election. Now is the time to breathe, take stock, increase your food stock, keep cash and take it all in your stride. 45-55 is a must. You will be tested as the rest of society loses and gets worse. It has to play out. Meanwhile, we carry on planning ahead and supporting each other. As British troops in full military gear, which is an intimidation tactic on the public, now on the streets of the UK, knocking on people's doors to fear tactic the public into taking fake COVID tests, the world is going mad. So let's ponder on this, shall we? You now have a computer expert acting as a global medical expert, a war machine acting as a nurse or doctor. You have the military acting as peacekeepers whilst bombing everything into oblivion. The UN acting as peacekeepers whilst raiding the war and poverty zones for child harvesting. We have a fake country acting as a real country and dominating global policies. You have politicians acting as clowns in their own play. You have real medical experts declared as not medical experts by a social media outlet acting as medical experts. You have social media outlets acting like a judge and jury. You have fact checkers acting they are seeking facts when it's lies they seek. You have newsreaders reading scripts and acting from a different world. You have shopkeepers and staff acting like the police. You have the police acting like a military junta, and Wall Street acting like they have a fiscal policy. We have a vaccine manufacturer acting as a government body called the CDC. We have a virus that's acting like it has a watch, a measuring tape, a calendar, and an age detector that can tell if you're over 70 or not. A virus that since its inception is acting like it has cured cancer, heart attacks, lung cancer and other major illnesses. We have a university, the Johns Hopkins Centre, acting like they can count. We have BLM acting like they care for the black people. You have top sports stars acting out a man's public death scene by taking the knee. Major charities acting like they care for people or animals. Snake oil people in the alt media acting like they are humanitarian. We have alien spies acting as cute household pets. We have intelligence agencies acting like they are concerned for our national security. We have the Rothschild clan acting like they are Chinese elderlies. An Earth archetype acting like the moon goddess. An Irish show host acting like a psychologist. And then we have the public walking around in masks, acting like they are sick. As the band Rush warned us years ago, all the world is a stage. They also warned us in the 2112 overture back in 1976 of a world ran by priests who are Cohens. Coincidence? But amidst all that, don't forget to stay tuned to the next exciting period, as according to certain claims, we will all look forward to the media this week of announcing the deaths of David Rennie, Nathaniel, Jacob, Lynn Forrester and Evelyn Rothschilds, and the subsequent state funeral arrangements and ceremonies. We will also get to finally find out the names of the deceased top order of the Black Sun, and we'll also see loads of advertisements for new CEOs for every major bank as well. Exciting times, we are told. Right, after that rapid fire opening, on to some of the more mundane news bits. And Facebook on Wednesday announced that it will not allow any ads on its services that seeks to delegitimize the outcome of an election. Liars. Including the up-and-coming US election on November the 3rd. And it said this policy will prohibit any ads that call specific methods of voting, such as voting by mail, as being inherently fraudulent or corrupt, according to them anyway. And the new policy will apply to ads on Facebook and Instagram effective immediately. So now they are election specialists as well, and they want to dictate the outcome of an election. All very APAC, that to me. So the next two pieces are also about Facebook, and it also concerns our group. And it's a heads up because we haven't got long left. So this week our Facebook page was flagged with this particular caption. These are violations that were posted or approved by an admin or moderator. If more admins' violations occur, we may disable your group. Your post goes against our community standards on dangerous individuals and organisations. We are unable to show content that goes against our community standards on dangerous individuals and organisations. This will be a common theme tonight. Common sense question. How are we supposed to know? If you don't know the community standards, how is anyone supposed to run their fascist-owned social media page? And which jackass comes up with these policies? Welcome to the beginning of Continuum. We did warn about it. So Facebook has now ramped up attacks against our group, and apart from slowing down the page to dial-up levels, have now gone on an offensive against all posts and are flagging every single one. Now, in the group settings, and one of them is to allow all members to post freely, like a freedom of choice this country is known for. But that is an illusion now, clearly. So now all posts have to be approved on the Facebook page by the admins, which has just sent our work levels up enormously. So why have they done that? Because if admins approve them, that makes the admin responsible for the posts, and as the admins approved them, the group is then held to account. And then they can shut down the group based on the admins approving the posts. All mentions of COVID-19, it seems, in posts are now being flagged. One member posted an alternative social media platform that is not censoring or fascist to Facebook, and that got flagged as well. Some of our members have been suspended by Facebook in other groups, and because they are in our group, that gives Facebook the right to flag our group because 2 members were suspended in other groups. Now this has the potential to be misused, and trolls and shills could get suspended by Facebook or their agency payers, and then join THI to get our group shut down. That's the way they've set it up. Now that is not stating the 2, 3 or 4 members who have been banned by Facebook are doing that to THI. But I need to raise the concern of, is that what is actually taking place here? So to comment, post or use Messenger now on Facebook, there is a 5 to 10 second delay for typing. And this is what Facebook warned if they flagged a group. They would slow down your page and divert traffic away. Now we set up MeWe 2 years back for this very reason. And it seems THI is yet again over the target and why they wish to play fascist yet childish games with our group. It's only a matter of time now before we get removed. The current ban of admins approving all posts ends December the 5th. I don't think we're going to last that long. And so you can move over to MeWe with your proper name, please, as it makes it easier to allow you in. Fake or pet names will be discarded. There is no reason at this point now for anonymity anymore. If Facebook continues this program, people will leave. Hopefully in droves. And then there's the small matter of advertising revenue, which they rely on, will end. And so will the fascist Hebrew Anunnaki social media. You watch, there'll be an advert sometime next year if this continues from Facebook asking people to come back, a bit like the Catholic Church did in the UK. People have had enough of being pissed upon. But it's not just THI that's suffering. Even the President of America had his account locked this past week. Next common sense question. I thought the President of USA was the most powerful man on the planet, and yet he can be blocked from a social media site. Twitter said that it locked President Trump's account on Monday after the Commander-in-Chief violated company policies by sharing the email address of a New York Post columnist in one of his tweets. And the social media giant confirmed to the Daily News on Tuesday that the coronavirus-stricken president, had his account locked until the post was removed. These are dangerous times for freedom of speech, which America is renowned for, allegedly, and yet I see little evidence to support it. And this is direct fascism, and Trump needs to act and remove Twitter's license, and Facebook for that matter, to operate in America until they reverse their fascist policies. So you have been warned. Don't be surprised one day you get up and the Facebook page is not there. Extreme poverty is set to rise again this year for the first time in more than 2 decades, with the coronavirus expected to push up to 115 million people into that category, according to the World Bank. But it was not the coronavirus. Forget that. We warned of this in June last year, remember, with the Clowns in Panic show. Before the virus was magically produced. Now the pandemic, it says, is compounding the forces of conflict and climate change. 2 birds, 1 stone. Which were already slowing poverty reduction, the bank said. By 2021, this could rise to as many as 150 million, it added. And extreme poverty is defined as living on less than $1.90 a day. Not an hour, a day. And the projected increase would be the first since 1998, which is a lie, when the Asian financial crisis shook the global economy, which is also a lie. Now, before the pandemic struck, the extreme poverty rate was expected to drop to 7.9% in 2020. 7.9% of people on less than $1.90 a day. You know, 8% practically of the planet living on less than $2 a day. And this is why the TPC has the mandate of need, not greed. 8% living on less than $2 a day. And then, as a recent example, We Are the humanitarian crew at UNC woman stating that she will do the biomachine tests for $150 an hour. Where is the perspective and rational thinking behind that? And I'm not just singling her out either, as she's far from alone in that greed-based thinking, and it has to change. And the first trust funds should go to all the people without the 5 basics, as they have no money flow. We in the Western world do have money flow, but our issue is it's just not shared out fairly. But now, according to the report, they say it's likely to affect between 9.1 and 9.4 of the world's population this year, according to the bank's biennial Poverty and Shared Prosperity report. Now, at the other end of the scale, billionaires have seen their fortunes hit record highs during the pandemic, with top executives from technology and industry earning the most. The world's richest saw their wealth climb 27.5% to $10.2 trillion from just April to July this year. That's all. Yeah, that's almost what, 3 trillion. And that's according to a report from the Rothschilds-based Swiss bank UBS. You bullshit is correct. Now, since 2013, the World Bank has been working towards the target of having no more than 3% of the world's population living on just $1.90 a day by 2030. However, now it says that goal will be beyond reach without swift, significant and substantial policy action. Well, don't ask politicians, they wouldn't know what a policy is if they tripped over it. And the World Bank report found that many of the new poor would be in countries that already have high poverty rates, with 82% of the total expected in what are classed as middle income countries, not third world. And the bank said progress in reducing global poverty was already slowing even before the COVID-19 crisis. No shit, Sherlock. How clever they are. Between 2015 and 17, 52 million rose out of poverty, but the rate of reduction over that period was less than half a percentage point a year. Now, I suspect the bulk of that was in China. They did an aggressive policy of reducing poverty within their country a few years back, and that was reported on our show. Now, what it says was this was less rapid than in the years between 1990 and 2015, when global poverty had dropped at the rate of about 1 percentage point per year. And the pandemic and global recession may cause over 1.4% of the world's population to fall into extreme poverty, said the World Bank Group President David Malpass. 1.4%. I guess Mr. Malpass is from the Johns Hopkins Centre for Calculations, because earlier the report said 9.1 to 9.4%. Unless he meant an extra 1.4. Do people actually think before they speak these days? It beggars belief, and a clear example of non-thinking was in our Tuesday show. And perhaps that's the real epidemic or pandemic, non-thinking. But this is exactly as we forecasted in June last year. The harvesting continues, and the harvesting is now done by and with the billionaires' game. And it's raping the whole planet. But what gets me is the World Bank, along with the IMF, correct, are the two biggest components of the global imbalance to begin with. Why? Because it's they who create debts for countries and the peoples with their deliberately designed loan programs. And the very fact that they stated they are working towards only 3% having less than $1.95 a day in not 2020 but 2030 is beyond shocking. $1.95 today buys next to nothing. But in 2030? And why are they setting a target of 3% and not 0% earning less than $2 an hour, never mind a day? And all of this can be fixed within a month if the need, not greed culture was promoted and then shared amongst all the peoples. And this is why and what the premise of the TPC is all about. Need, not greed. Caring and sharing. Cooperative and not competitive. Sharing, not sole ownership. Next we come to the Secretary of the Deep State, Mike Pompeo, who recently published a sharp letter slamming the Vatican's plans to renew an agreement with the Chinese government on church operations in China. Really. And he promoted the article in a tweet concluding, "The Vatican endangers its moral authority." You're assuming they had any. They don't. Should it renew the deal? So now America's deep state dictates church policy as well now. Common sense question. Why and how is it their business? But an indignant Vatican took the article more as a calculated affront than a diplomatic gesture, and friction broke into the open on Wednesday as Mr. Pompeo arrived in Rome and met with prelates and others who are hostile to Pope Francis. So basically what they're telling you there then, he met with Langley CIA agents. Just saying. Now, the Vatican denied him a meeting with the pontiff and rebuffed his efforts to derail the deal with China. Pompeo asked to meet the Pope, who turned him down because Francis had clearly said that he does not receive political figures ahead of elections, according to Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who as Secretary of State is the Vatican's second-ranking official. But to some observers on both sides of the tensions between the Roman Catholic Church and the Trump administration, Mr. Pompeo's visit is as much about the coming presidential election as about Chinese policy. Now, Mr. Pompeo dismissed that suggestion as absurd, but intended or not, his trip signals that President Trump is on the side of those conservative American Catholics who worry about the Church's direction under Francis and think he is soft on China. Hello, McFly, Mr. Trump. If dealing with China is such an issue as stated, I'm going to ask another common sense question. What about Jared Kushner and his involvement with China for overpriced and microchipped masks? Yes, you heard that right. We'll have more on that later. And the article goes on. Francis and Mr. Trump, who have exchanged sharp words in the past, present starkly different visions on issues ranging from the environment to immigration to the threat of populism. Yes, that is called faction fighting, and it's got nothing to do with making America great again as promised. Now, in appealing to the Vatican's support for religious freedom as a reason to drop its China agreement, Mr. Pompeo seemed to seek common ground, but in a way that upset the Pope's chief allies and delighted his chief critics. Religious freedom. They said that about the pilgrims, and yet they only came here to rape the country and kill the natives. Religious freedom's my arse, Mr. Pompeo. Dear me. Really, are we still using that same script from 500 years ago? Religious freedoms. Anyway, Cardinal Parolin said Mr. Pompeo's article had caused surprise at the Vatican because this visit to Rome by the Secretary and the meetings with high officials at the Holy See has already been in the works and would have been a more opportune forum for airing grievances. And he also added that Mr. Pompeo's choice to publish in First Things, which is a conservative Christian magazine that has called Francis a failure as a pope, also mattered. But your failure to look after the American people's interests only and not factions is a spectacular failure, Mr. Secretary of the Deep State. Now, Pompeo declined to respond to the remarks of Cardinal Parolin, whom he will meet at the Vatican on Thursday. And the Secretary of State of the Vatican, Mr. Parolin, told reporters that Pope Francis had to turn down a meeting with Pompeo because he does not receive the political figures ahead of elections. And they know that. Now, for decades, China's communist, read Zionist, government operated a Catholic church that it controlled, insisting that Beijing, not the Vatican, had the power to appoint bishops, whilst persecuting priests and parishioners who answer to the Holy See. And under the 2018 agreement, China recognised some papal authority, papal bull, and the Church accepted the legitimacy of bishops chosen by Beijing and a shameful retreat, according to France's critics. And it is a deal that the two sides are trying to renew, and Cardinal Parolin said delicate negotiations over the future appointment of bishops would go ahead. Now, Mr. Pompeo, who consistently promotes religious freedom and verbally thrashes China's leadership, talked to reporters on Wednesday afternoon about bringing the Vatican's moral authority to bear on China. And he said American policy was to bring, quote, every actor who can benefit the people of China to take away the horrors of the authoritarian regime. There's that word again we used a lot in the opening piece. Actor. Yes, Mr. Pompeo, there are lots of actors in the aptly named theatre of war. But Mr. Pompeo has not been bashful about using religious backdrops for political messages. He addressed listen closely, the Republican National Convention from Jerusalem. What a surprise that is. A Republican convention in Jerusalem. Oh my, Mr. Kushner and his string pullers will have approved of that, no doubt. Another common sense question. Why is a Republican convention for an American election being held in a foreign country? Could that not be perceived as foreign collusion of an election? Just saying. Now, earlier this month at a Baptist megachurch in Plano, Texas, he described China's abuse of the Uyghur Muslims as a war on faith. So suddenly they're interested in Muslims when they've been bombing them to death for the past 30 years. And he then urged the congregation to vote on November the 3rd. And Archbishop Paul Gallagher, the Vatican Foreign Minister, was asked whether Mr. Pompeo had sought to manipulate the Vatican for political purposes. And he said that is one of the reasons that the Holy Father, it's not holy, it's not anyone else's father either, is not receiving the Secretary of State, he said. Cardinal Parolin said he had no evidence that Mr. Pompeo's article and visit were meant to aid the president's re-election, but it is a thought that can be made. Desperate stuff and actions to play the faction games, Mr. Pompeo. and our group knows the Jesuits are your rival faction. You are paid to look after the interests of the American people, not fly around the world at our expense to far-flung countries dictating their policies. Next category, weather wars and fake climate change. We're going to Italy again. At least one person has died and at least 19 are missing after a powerful storm hit southern France and northwestern Italy this week. Named Alex, it brought fierce winds and torrential rains and causing severe floods. And a number of villages suffered serious damage around the southern city of Nice, and its mayor described it as the worst flooding in living memory. In northern Italy, several roads and bridges were swept away by floodwater, while several rivers burst their banks. And the man who died was an Italian firefighter in the Aosta Valley. Another 11 people are said to be missing in the country's northwest region after heavy rains then hit overnight. And the Piedmont region, several villages were cut off after the rains made roads impassable, and the situation there was described as extremely critical by officials. Hundreds of aid workers have been sent to help rescue efforts in the cut-off villages, and the storm also affected the northwestern regions of Lombardy and Liguria. The city of Venice, which had been braced for high waters after suffering violent storms in August, was successfully protected by the flood barrier system recently declared fully operational. Now, the reason I put this in is with the recent hurricane in Greece added into the mix, in regions traditionally not prone to these level of storms. Is this weather wars? Or is it an example the tilt of the world is moving quicker and more northern sections are moving southwest, as our show hypothecated? Or is it both? Here comes helicopter head, Prince Charles, who said climate change poses such a severe threat that the world's only option is to adopt a military-style response reminiscent of the US Marshall Plan, oh dear, to rebuild post-war Europe, according to Prince Charles on Monday. A long-time advocate for nature, really. The British Royal said climate change was rapidly becoming a comprehensive catastrophe that will dwarf the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. So now we have a royalist acting as a climate change specialist. Are you seeing a pattern yet? He went on, at this late stage I can see no other way forward but to call for a Marshall-like plan for nature, people and the planet. And this was what he said in a video recorded for the launch of a week of virtual climate change events in New York. No surprise there either. And he said we must now put ourselves on a warlike footing, approaching our action from the perspective of a military-style campaign, he said. This is a justification and also a heads up to us, you know how they have to tell us, that a military-led martial law plan will be rolled out globally. That's what they're going to try. Common sense question again. What is the trustee and the highest national security clearance doing to prevent this event? In the light of the sad death this week of Eddie Van Halen, and my message to Charlie, is in the next song. Prince Charles, please go to the tallest cliff and yes, go ahead, jump into a dry riverbed, please. Right, where are we next? The Trump section. Now, the House passed a $2.2 trillion coronavirus relief bill on Thursday as bipartisan negotiations with the Trump administration dragged on, with Democrats moving forward on their legislation in the absence of a deal with Republicans. Now, the vote had earlier been postponed to give the non-Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin more time to agree on an aid package. But those conversations haven't yet yielded a bipartisan agreement. We're still far apart, Mrs. Pelosi said Thursday. Thankfully for that. Anyone who's far away from here as possible is beneficial. And she said, hopefully we can find our common ground on this and do so soon. The best common ground for you, Pelosi, is a cemetery with all the other zombies. So Mrs. Pelosi and Mnuchin spoke multiple times on Thursday, and that is what is known as a NATO chat. No action, talk only. And Pelosi said that she was going to review documents from Mnuchin, but no deal was likely Thursday evening. Now, the legislation passed 214 to 207, with 18 Democrats joining Republicans in opposition to the bill. And the Democrat bill would give money to state and local governments, send another round of stimulus checks to many Americans, reinstate a $600 weekly supplement to unemployment benefits, and give assistance to airlines, restaurants, and performance venues, amongst other measures. Now, the Republicans have panned the bill, giving it no chance of passage in the GOP-controlled Senate. But putting in a bill that had no chance of being passed in the Senate is a further waste of public money, is it not? Well, there I go again, common sense. Oh dear. Common sense is breaking out. It's a pandemic. We're all going to die. So after Pelosi put forward her $2.2 trillion plan this week, Mnuchin made a $1.6 trillion counter offer, an increase from the $1.5 trillion that the administration had previously signalled it could support. And the new offer from Mnuchin included $250 billion in funding for state and local governments, which has been a key disagreement in the talks. The Republicans had earlier offered $150 billion for state and local governments. Now, the Democrats' $2.2 trillion price tag marks a reduction from the $3.5 trillion bill that the House Democrats passed in May, and they're still arguing. Instead, the $915 billion for state and local governments Democrats originally sought, their new bill now seeks $436 billion for localities and municipalities. Common sense question again. Where is this money coming from with the country on shutdown or lockdown? Now, whether the two sides can close the remaining distance, though, is unclear, according to this report, and the White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany said Thursday that Pelosi should accept the administration's new offer. It's a good proposal, but it is one she is not interested in. Now, she didn't rule out a further revision of the White House position, but said right now we have the 1.6 trillion number, and I'll let you know if that number goes up, she said. Both the White House and the House Democrats are renewing their attempts to reach a deal as the absence of another stimulus bill is beginning to visibly weigh on the economy. Now, with no new aid in sight, American Airlines Group Inc. and United Airlines Holding Inc. said they would go forward for now with a total of more than 32,000 job cuts. And the government data showed US household income fell sharply in August due to a drop in unemployment benefits. Worker layoffs also remained high. Economists surveyed by the Wall Street Journal expect the September unemployment rate set to be released Friday to improve from 8.2% from 8.4% in the prior month. Now, ahead of Thursday's vote, some centrists, Democrats, whatever that means, more BS, word salad games, had pushed for the House to take up a bill to demonstrate action in the weeks before the election. And some Democratic lawmakers said they would join with Republicans on a procedural motion to compel a floor vote on small business aid if House leaders didn't tee up another vote. Isn't that bribery again? In reaching a deal, House Democrats and the Trump administration also face another obstacle. Senate Republicans opposed again doling out money for a major aid package, and many Republicans in the Senate see the economy recovering without additional aid injections and are wary of further deficit spending. Delusional. Also delusional. Now, after a $1 trillion plan from GOP leaders didn't draw broad support in their party last month, Senate Republicans put together a skinny proposal to try to unify their ranks. And that bill, which called for a $300 billion in new funds and repurposing $350 billion in other funds, failed in the Senate when the Democrats blocked it. And the Senate Republicans said they might not be able to support a package as expensive as the one Mr. Munchkin has offered. If the Secretary is over $1.6 trillion, then I think he's out-negotiated his majority in the Senate, according to Roger Wicker. And the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, said he would continue to leave the negotiations to Pelosi and the White House, and said if they can reach an agreement, I'll take a look at it and see whether I can sell that to Senate Republicans. Now, as the election nears, scepticism has grown on Capitol Hill that an agreement is possible at this stage. The time to cut a deal is running out, and the House is slated to leave for a month-long recess at the end of this week, although Ms. Pelosi said that she would hold the House in session and continue to work with the administration. But any deal would have to pass the Senate, which is currently focused on filling a Supreme Court vacancy and planning to recess much of October. And Democratic lawyers are also looking ahead to the election. Former Vice President Joe Biden, the Democratic nominee, is up in nationwide polls. We all know how reliable they are. And some speculators are favouring the Democrats to win the Senate this time. And then some Democratic lawmakers see the increased potential for an aid package after the inauguration. And Pelosi said, we're getting ready for what comes next, but we need stuff now. Yes, Pelosi, you need more stuff now, like alcohol and adrenochrome. Go away. And one of our THI memes applies now. What happens next? Well, I'll tell you what happens next. Mr. Trump pulled the plug on the bipartisan coronavirus relief talks, putting off all efforts now to get more aid to struggling households and businesses until at least after election day. How very nice of him. And that was said to be an abrupt move that jolted Wall Street and surprised lawmakers of both parties. I have instructed my representatives to stop negotiating until after the election, when immediately after I win, we will pass a major stimulus bill, Mr. Trump wrote on Tuesday. Now, Mr. Trump's tweet appeared to end, at least for now, a long-running effort between Pelosi and Munchkin to reach an agreement on another $1 trillion-plus coronavirus relief deal. Some common sense questions again are in order now. Is that, or could that not be seen as a bribe? Vote for me and you'll get your stimulus. And why do we have to wait after an election? Why do we, the people, always have bills that benefit us delayed or cancelled? And has that much really changed in 4 years of American politics? Trump, like the trustee, and the Q group are all keen on putting forward promises, and yet how many are being delivered to we the people? Clinton and Russian collusion documents declassified this week. Woo! Was all cheered on from the peanut gallery of the Q group. Now, it is a good move by Trump, but it has to be viewed as a rival faction-based at this point. It's not for our benefit. Now, whilst many will jump up and down at this declassification, we at THI will not learn anything of any note about the collusion or the Hillary emails. Nothing. It was fake in 2016, it's fake in 2020. And the only thing different is Hillary is not Hillary anymore. It's Anne. And yeah, whoever that is. And she still walks free amongst us after 4 years. And Trump needs to address we the people. We need jobs. We need investment. We need an end to this fake lockdown and masks. An end to the vaccine programme. We need shelter. We need food. We need to help the homeless, help the poverty-stricken, end the wars, and we need self-sufficiency. We need full-on tax reform. We need sovereignty. We need government overhaul. We need a competent disaster relief programme and much more. And most of that was handed to him on a plate by the trustee and the team. And none of it to date has been delivered. None. And that, after 4 years in office, is a bad indictment of the government officials, and not just Trump either. Speaking of disaster relief programs, oh my, this section is called Exposures. A US government report published on Thursday found that the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, mismanaged the distribution of goods in Puerto Rico after Hurricanes Irma and Maria, leading to delays in the delivery of food and water. Common sense questions. Haven't FEMA done this after every disaster? And why hasn't it been addressed? The Office of the Inspector General said it took more than 2 months on average for the goods to reach their final destination, and that FEMA had lost sight of nearly 40% of its shipment to the US territory that was worth more than $250 million, of which 98% of those shipments were meals and water, according to the report. 40% of its shipments missing. Yeah, right. That is their usual trick. You bill for supplies and never deliver them, and then they sell it on to somebody else. Common sense question. Will lead FEMA officials be held responsible for paying back the American people the 40% of the shipments they lost? Given the lost visibility and delayed shipments, FEMA cannot ensure it provided commodities to Puerto Rico disaster survivors as needed to sustain life and alleviate suffering, the report said. Officials said goods sat at FEMA's custody or in FEMA's custody for roughly 48 days. Not hours, days. With water and food experiencing shipping delays of 71 and 59 days, respectively. The office said it also conducted a survey that found it took FEMA an average of 10 days after the hurricanes to deliver the first food and water to survivors. Officials noted that while goods were airdropped immediately after the disaster, the quantities were insufficient to meet the survivors' needs. And there you have it. Now, one of the tasks I was asked to take part in for the Trust was a disaster relief programme that replaced FEMA, where the plan was to build 6 super centres that would be built 100 miles from the hurricane-affected coasts and stacked with everything that would be required for any disaster, all in bulk. It would have created thousands of jobs. We had transportation companies lined up as delivery to the site, to and from, proper oversight staff to ensure that it all arrived, and every cent was accountable. Now, the total bill came to $105 billion and was given to Mr. Trump in October 2018, with the Trust paying the $105 billion bill in its entirety. Trump approved it, allegedly, and arranged for 5 Treasury-backed credit cards with 5 names on them, including one for Kim, one for me, one for Tom, the White House advisor, and 2 others, of which each card would be loaded with $21 billion to carry out the project. The Treasury was raided by Citadel, a company that runs NYPD and linked to Anne, Hillary Clinton, and blocked the cards and threw out the ambassador for the Trust out of the building, stating, "We don't care what Trump says or does," and out the door we went. 2 years on from that event now, and Trump has still not fixed that issue either. A Texas grand jury has indicted streaming giant Netflix on child pornography charges. The indictment accuses Netflix and its top executives of promotion of lewd visual material depicting a child with regard to the controversial French film Cuties. Now, according to the indictment, which was handed down on September the 23rd, but only revealed on Tuesday, Netflix did knowingly promote visual material which depicts the lewd exhibition of the genitals or pubic area of a clothed or partially clothed child who was younger than 18 years of age at the time. The indictment goes on to note, relevant to the legal definitions of pornography, that the visual material in Cuties appeals to the prurient interest in sex and has no serious literary, artistic, political or scientific value. Now, Cuties, which won a prize at the prestigious Sundance Film Festival in February, was put online to stream into Americans' homes by Netflix on September the 9th. The Sundance Festival, hidden up in the hills of Utah with guarded entrances, is a ritual sacrifice event. Just saying. Now, the French movie, which was called Mignonnes in its native land, depicts a Mean Girls type clique of 11-year-olds, and one of the activities of which is a dance troupe. And the climatic scene is a contest for which the protagonist, a Senegalese immigrant, devises a routine which includes group twerks, mouth gestures, ground humping and hip grinding. Other scenes show them rehearsing the numbers and other sexualized moves that the girls are sometimes depicted as only half understanding. Now, Cuties is a social commentary against the sexualization of young children, and this charge is without merit, and we stand by the film, according to Netflix. Again, we warned of this, and this is an attempt by the perverts in our society to normalise it and so eliminate any judicial actions taken against them when they're caught. And once you go down a path like that, there is no end. Coming soon on Netflix and national TV, bestiality is good for animals. You may laugh, but this is what these people do and promote it. All for the public's acceptance. They have to get the acceptance. And this movie is a tester of public opinion's exercise. That's what it's about. It's seeking your acceptance, and to see how many will reject it. Because if many don't, we're going to see more and more and more. That's how it works. Next is race issues. A black militia group called Not Fucking Around Coalition, NFAC, assembled in Lafayette, Louisiana this week to protest police violence. And the demonstration comes amid growing racial tensions in the United States. And several hundred black-clad NFAC members, many of them carrying assault rifles, paraded through Lafayette on Saturday, and the column included people wearing body armour and other tactical gear. Now, the march was held to seek justice for Trayford Pellerin, a black man who was shot and killed by Lafayette police in August. The militia also reportedly motivated to hold a rally in the city after a Louisiana congressman allegedly threatened them in a Facebook message. Now, the march thankfully ended peacefully, but one individual was detained after accidentally discharging his firearm, according to the NFAC, and the person involved was not part of their organisation. Yeah, right. Now, the US has been rocked by months of anti-racism demonstrations initially sparked by the death of George Floyd at the hands of the Minneapolis police, allegedly, and many of the protests have descended into riots. Now, the NFAC leader, National Front, who calls himself Grandmaster Jay, gave a speech during the event in which he argued that the US President Donald Trump's Make America Great Again slogan doesn't apply to black people. And he said, I can't remember a time in this country when it was great for us, he said, and then led the crowd in chants of black power. And yes, I agree on one statement there. Much of the treatment of blacks before 1980 was beyond barbaric. That brought much shame to this country. But has anything changed since within the black communities, since their rightful joining with people of all other colours? Why are the communities still rendered like ghettos with graffiti everywhere, riddled with drug and prostitution racketeering? And why are the highest rate of murders black on black killings? You know, there has to be some balance here on both sides. Black people are demanding respect, which is fine. Then drastically clean up your own communities then, and the rest of the people will support you in that endeavour. Respect is something you earn through your own actions, not demand because you are one colour or another. And how about a not effing around coalition to clean up your neighbourhoods? And I'm calling on the many good and decent black people to organise that and stop these actors within your community causing mayhem and running divide and conquer programmes. Grandmaster Jay, the Grandmaster, eh? Do people not get the irony of that label? One, it's Freemasonic, which has traditionally not allowed blacks in their many fraternities, and two, it's a KKK term for the leader. Oh my, how stupid can people get? And then we come to more levels of utter jackassery. A linguistic professor, Mary Buchholz, kicked off her presentation at a recent online conference for academics by condemning all white Americans as racists, and said deniers must acknowledge their guilt and do better. As a white American, she said, I'm by definition racist. I was trying to find out which race she's from, because I have a feeling it was born to, with a name like Buchholz, who chairs the linguistic department of the University of California, Santa Barbara, and said at a September 11th webinar hosted by the University of Wisconsin-Madison, "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise," she added, "that all white Americans are racist." As a guest speaker at the lecture, Buchholz's topic was billed as the white supremacist and colonial underpinnings of linguistics, but her talk centred more on the allegedly inherent racism of white people. She said, I know there is a sort of rhetoric of white people in the United States rejecting the label of racism, but I think we need to acknowledge that and do better. And she likened white supremacy to a pandemic or disease and argued that there's no such thing as non-racism, as all people are either racist or anti-racist, and you can't be neutral. Yet again, we see the Hebrew Anunnaki policy of declaring one particular group as racist to fulfill their agenda, when the fact is all colours are racist. Fact. From an overview point of view. Not one group, in overview terms, wishes to mix and cohabitate as a group. Look around you. Natives are on their own reservations. We have regions of this country that house Germans, Italians, Puerto Rican, Jamaican, Jewish, Irish, Chinese, Koreans, Hispanic only communities. And people go and mix only with their own people. That's not created by the system. That is done by the people themselves, and that by definition is a form of racism. And why I say all colours are racist. Don't tell me that black parents have not gone ballistic if their child brings home a white person as their boy or girlfriend. It is frowned upon by many in the black community. And mixing with Hispanics for blacks is also considered a no-no in overall terms. So please, let's cut out all this sanctimonious bullcrap of we're not racist, because the evidence states otherwise. My theory, as mentioned in previous shows, is we don't, by and large, mix. Because we're not all originating from the same planet or species. And by species, I mean we did not all come from the same humanoid stock. Genetics proves that beyond a doubt. But it doesn't mean to say we can't all come together. Now, the latter assertion echoed the race obsession of Ibram Kendi, who is a Boston University professor who directs a Centre for Anti-Racist Research and was rewarded in August with a $10 million donation from the Twitter founder Jack Dorsey. So people can send 10 million for a fake program, but can't send 10 million to feed people. Oh my, what fantastic versions of humanity we live amongst. Not. And Kendi went so far as to argue that the term not racist should be removed from the human vocabulary because a person can only be racist or anti-racist. Where's the triality? There you go again. Common sense. Yet more think tank word salad by so-called professors or experts. And like I said, there are no experts in any field. They're only experts on their shortened scripts of narrative. Real experts know 95% or more of their subject. And most experts have less than 65%, and the third missing are the key components. Mr. Kendi was born in, just saying. Now, Buchholz also railed against capitalising the W in the word white, even though the AP style book for journalists earlier this year ruled that the B in black must be capitalised when referring to black people. White people have built a system of white supremacy to oppress everybody else, Buchholz argued. I'm convinced this woman is born to. Convinced of it. The professor shared with their audience a link to documents from a workshop on how to be white allies, apprentices and accomplices. No, just no. White people in the main have been labelled as the oppressors, when a certain other race of people who declared themselves as white when they're not, the Hebrews, had much to do with their oppression. It was they that ran all the slavery ships. Go and research it for yourself. And the best thing black people can do is go and listen to one of your own, Dane Calloway. He'll tell you all the history of the black race you'll need to know. But be careful, he will tell you the truth and you may not like it. It's just bad actors with their sweet, little and maybe large lies. Right, next section. The virus bullshit. A report out of Belgium this week, where it stated over a half of the coronavirus infections revealed this summer by one of Belgium's biggest labs were old and no longer contagious, but were still reported as new cases. Now, the Belgian daily newspaper Het Laatste News examined the tests carried out by AZ Delta, AstraZeneca, one of the largest labs in the country, and made a stunning discovery. And almost half of all positive cases reported throughout June, July and August were actually people with an old infection. And the problem, they found, it turns out, lies in the PCR COVID-19 tests. The paper reports that the scientific data reveals virus particles can be detected up to 83 days after the actual infection, and this led to instances where people were no longer contagious but were still registered as positive cases. And according to HLN, the news people, all of these people had to be quarantined. Now, other so-called Belgian experts, of which there are none, sounded the alarm in mid-July, probably because of these results that were fake again, when coronavirus numbers spiked after a relief in June, and even insisted that the second wave had already begun for the country. And they said we may have had to deal with the old infections largely in the summer months, and this is according to the lab's clinical biologist Frederick van Hoyke told the paper. That'll be another fake checker group will now flag on social media when someone actually states the actual facts. Fact checker. Wouldn't know a fact if you fell over it. Common sense question again. Why is this not being reported in the media? We're going back to the UK. The UK has agreed to settle a lawsuit of how it selected an IT contract for coronavirus testing at its Lighthouse Labs. And the BBC understands that the settlement will cost the government up to £2 million. The British company Diagnostic AI, claimed it lost out to European rival Eugentech despite spotting some positive coronavirus cases its rivals missed. And it sued the government over the decision, claiming the selection process was unfair and unlawful. Now, Lighthouse Labs are a UK-wide network of specialists, there's that word again, specialists and experts, jackasses is the correct term, coronavirus laboratories managed by the government and run by private firms. All very Langley, that, isn't it? When the labs were set up, companies pitched in to analyse the test results. Now, the UK Lighthouse Labs have been established to dramatically increase the number of coronavirus tests that can take place each day to support the national effort against the coronavirus pandemic. The Lighthouse Labs are managed through a partnership with the Department of Health, Medicines Discovery Catapult, who are out of Alderley Park facility, who are involved in the adrenochrome scandal we covered in Expose 3. The UK Biocentre, the University of Glasgow, GSK, AstraZeneca, who was funded with the American people's money by Mr. Trump, the University of Cambridge and Perkin Elmer. Now, their development is also supported by the NHS, Public Health England, the Scottish Government, BioAscent and the University of Dundee, the Welsh Government and their Life Sciences Hub Wales. Unreal. Here we go again. What are we on? Virus BS. Here's another virus. The UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said he was really worried that the UK Prime Minister could have died from COVID-19 after he was admitted to intensive care in the spring. What a load of BS, Mr. Raab. Yet another leading figure who is born too. And it seems the real pandemic's largely people who are born too. To me anyway. Now, the Foreign Secretary stood in for Boris Johnson during his time in intensive care while he recovered, and speaking at the Conservative Party conference, Mr. Raab said the virus nearly took the life of the PM, and that he was also worried for the PM's fiancée, Carrie Simons, but always had faith he would pull through. Now, Mr. Johnson had spent 3 nights in intensive care at London's St Thomas's Hospital in April after allegedly contacting the virus. Methinks he would have been better served spending 3 days in the barbers, if you ask me. President Trump said Thursday night that he and First Lady Melania, like the last first man, would begin the quarantine process, which is supposed to last for 14 days, but miraculously turned into 3. After one of his closest advisors, Hope Hicks, who travelled with him several times this week on board Air Force One, tested positive for the virus. Now, Hicks, who was 31, served as Trump's campaign spokeswoman from the beginning of his candidacy and then as White House Communications Director before leaving in March 2018 for a job at Fox News. And she returned to the White House in February in the role of counsellor to the president. 31-year-old counselling. Very pretty counsellor, I might add. Maybe that's why. So Trump told Fox News' Sean Hannity during a live interview Thursday night that he and the First Lady were tested after they learned about Hicks and were awaiting the results. She tested positive and I just went out with a test. So whether we quarantine or whether we have it, I don't know, Trump said. I just went for a test and we'll see what happens. Who knows? We spend a lot of time with Hope, so we'll see what happens. Now, Trump later tweeted that he and the First Lady, in the meantime, will begin our quarantine process. And it was unclear then as what that would look like in practice and whether that means he would be cancelling his events, which included a campaign rally in Florida. So that's what happened last Thursday. You all know what happened next. What a load of trumpery that is and was. More acting. Because according to the trustee, he was in Greenland with fellow Black Sun members. Common sense question for the next piece. We're going to start off with a common sense question. Has anyone asked why all the governments involved in the New World Order installation insist on wearing the masks, even though it has been proven they offer no protection against viruses? I suspect we are going to find out why with this report. The mask manufacturers have switched the alleged virus protection masks to new ones with secretly built-in microchipped masks with hard-to-find RFID chips in them. Oh my. These masks all came from China. And now you know why Kushner, FEMA and Gavin Newsom, with the complicity of Mr. Trump, as he was told about it, I was there when Kim spoke to him, that Kushner blocked American companies from selling masks and bought them from China and India, microchipped. Now, France was forced to respond to fears about microchipped face masks only last month. Jerome Salomon, Director General for Health in France, has tried to reassure the public after questions surfaced as to why some face masks have an electronic chip inside of them, and some fear that they could be used to trace the wearer. Salomon said, "I can tell you that cloth masks are excellent in France. I wear them every day and they are better for our environment. They can be washed and reused." And then he said, "They are made in France and have no chip inside. That I can guarantee." And then he went on and did a contradictions piece. That kind of reminds me of our last show. And said, still, some masks actually have chips inside, but these are not intended for any type of identification, tracking or tracing. Common sense question. How does he know they are not used for those purposes? But then he revealed this classic. He said, instead, they allow the manufacturer to count the number of times the mask has been washed and reused, so that they can warn the user when the recommended maximum has been reached. Okay, Mr. Salomon, or is it Solomon? So basically what you're saying is here, let me get this right. So for the manufacturers to warn the user of the maximum washing has been reached, would then have to contact the user to do so, right? So how would they be able to do that without tracing or tracking? Yes, I know, it's a common sense question again. So in other words, the French Director General for Health claims to his country people that some masks wear this chip to show owners how often they have already been washed. An RFID chip for a scrap of fabric that is not worth washing because of the low price, and even less because it's known to be infected by bacteria and mould after a short period of wearing. So that this health risk does not disappear with normal laundry. Now, the manufacturers of these masks have started to equip them with an RFID chip, which can be used to determine the location and daily movement profile of each mask wearer down to the meter and at any time. Of course, the total surveillance of humanity is one of the primary goals of the New World Order, as not only I, but also other alternative media could irrefutably prove. It's all very Robert David Steele and Clowns in Panic show, is it not again? So, let's now take a closer look at Mr. Salomon, shall we? Born in April in 1969, is the 16th arrondissement of Paris to a father who was administrator in the National Assembly and a mother who was a teacher. He is the grandson of the resistance fighter Simone Levy, himself the granddaughter of Captain Alfred Dreyfus, who was convicted of espionage and then rehabilitated. He is also the great-grandson of Pierre-Paul Levi, and one of the discoverers of the diphtheria vaccine. Yet again, it has a line of being born to. And at that point is way beyond a coincidence. So now we have the French General Director for Health of a born to Jewish parents as well as a standing Prime Minister for the UK in the previous article. Now the article goes on and states Jerome Salomon is of particular importance as it's well known the New World Order is not only but above all an idea of Jewish globalists. And the Jewish globalist Jacques Attali wrote as follows back in 2011. I think that his date is wrong, but you'll get the gist. And he said, around 2050, under the pressure of the market and thanks to new technological means, the world order will become a single world market, planetary and stateless, to unite. The whole world as a single market without democracy. I call this coming world super empire. First, public order is dismantled, then the sovereign states, and finally the nations themselves. This global market will be uniform and stateless, and will be based on the former nature of California. Since London's cultural values have long resembled those of Amsterdam, Boston those of London, and Los Angeles those of New York, the super empire will remain partly American. Partly. The consumer goods produced will largely be a continuation of nomadic goods. The culture of the super empire will be a crossroads, its way of life unstable, its values individualistic and ideals narcissistic, and this is how the first phase of the future begins. Go fuck yourselves. That's my answer to that. Some of you have sent me the latest from Life Force videos this week and have requested me to comment on them. And you all stated it contains more errors and more inconsistencies. And I could do a whole piece on it, like I did with some previous shows of theirs, but I ended up leaving them all out of the show. Why? Because constructive criticism, supportive suggestions, trying to correct obvious errors and glaring gaps in the narrative, and asking common sense questions is now deemed as attacking them. Accountability, yet again, only applies to me and THI, it seems. And so I will just sit back and watch it all unfold. But when the latest claims don't come to fruition and dire warnings do, she will be held accountable for all of it, as she is the one on all levels. I see many of you now mentioning for yourselves the slide downwards of global issues since May, and are putting two and two together. Is it indicative? That's not for me to say. But I am no longer going to, or wish to, waste my energy on trying to help someone that seems hell-bent on ruining herself and her reputation, and in doing so damages we the people. I tried. As for Tuesday's show, I need to pass no further comment on that, except to repeat a line that Oscar Wilde once said. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery that mediocrity can pay to greatness. Let's do a hypothetical, in part factual flowchart, shall we, for pondering purposes. Number 1. There was an election 4 years ago, and one person was paid to not win. 2. All was going well, and then there was an intervention by one person, or so we were told. 3. The non-winner then won. 4. The non-winner then shat his pants. 5. Non-winner was given ultimate help for him to succeed. 6. Non-winner was funded more than any other president. 7. Non-winner then goes back to his Hebrew Anunnaki roots. 8. Supporter of non-winner pulls back or out. All very Alan now. 9. Non-winner decides he can't continue. 10. Non-winner declares himself out of the race. 11. New winner is declared. 12. New winner declared incompetent. 13, or 12 plus 1, she-devil takes over. With the MSNBC doing an interview this week with the mock premise of Pelosi acting as a stand-in president on the show, are they telling you something? But then Mr. Trump, we were told, went to Greenland with his Black Sun people and did not have COVID. Common sense question is, why is the trustee engaging or helping a known to her Black Sun member? The Q Group ran a headline statement with a picture of Edward Snowden this past week, saying CIA shill traitor to the Union. So I got pondering. And with 2 Q drops this week stating on the 23rd of January 2018, which said, at Snowden, how's Russia? Almost time, Q. And the second one dated the 17th of February 2019, at Snowden, what happens when Russia gives you up? Will the CIA protect you? Sleep is important. So the first one, the 23rd of January 18. Second one, 17th of February 19. Now the first date in 2018, and it said almost time. It's now 33 months later since that statement of almost time, and it appears they don't move too quickly, or perhaps not at all. The second one of, will Russia give you up and will the CIA protect him, will become more clear with the next pondering on this piece. But sleep is important, Q said, I would suggest, is an assassination warning. But who is warning and who will assassinate him? So Q declared Snowden a CIA shill. But Snowden exposed the CIA and the NSA of illegal operations on and against we the people. And the mean statement of Snowden being a CIA shill does carry merit, as Snowden worked for all the clown operations during his working life as cybersecurity, as it said, which is essentially translates as espionage and spy. He worked for the CIA, NSA, as a private contractor of NSA Booz Hamilton, while stationed in Geneva, Switzerland, Rothschild's country. He worked in the UN field, attended NATO summits, worked for Dell Computers, and attended Johns Hopkins University. So he was fully involved in all clown-based organisations. But one interesting story he told, which tells you exactly how these people operate, and also how the blackmail game ran by CIA and other 5, 9 or 0 eyes operations, was an incident while in Switzerland, whilst working for the CIA, and he described his experience in Geneva as formative, stating that the CIA deliberately got a Swiss banker drunk and then encouraged him to drive home. You know what happens next. Well, Snowden said when the latter was arrested, a CIA operative offered to help in exchange for the banker becoming an informant. That's how they work. So back to the main headline, and why is it significant, a CIA shill? Is this an example of the factions within the CIA? Remember, there is 4 separate CIA factions within that organisation, and none, by and large, are for and by the people. Point 2. The term used, traitor to the Union. The Union is representative of the Civil War, where the Union, ran by the Crown, was against the people of America. The Union represented the North and the Confederacy the South. The Union, like the United States, are both European-based control systems and nothing to do with America or Americans. They are Crown-based organisations and an enemy of we the people, not only in America but every other country as well. And dare I say it, the conclusion of this piece is, maybe Q is not for we the people either, but is a faction-based group intending on taking over the power game for themselves. Snowden is clearly working for one faction, and Q an opposition faction. Now, whilst they battle out things in public, we the people will get all kinds of disclosures, which is great for us. But we all have to remember this is largely a faction-based war, and not for the benefit of we the people. and it will ultimately turn out, unless the people stop it, new boss, same as the old boss. And we, the people, must become a force ourselves. And to do that, we have to build up the People's Club. It is what it is designed for, a club for and by the people. Numbers of like-minded people all pulling together equals power. With Trump and Q at this point looking like another saviour programme, weight clubs, and I would love to be proven wrong, but I'm not sitting back and waiting on trusting a plan that nobody has any idea of what that plan is. If the highest security clearance person on the planet can't find out about the plan, then who can? Now this show has stated all along, only we save us. And that is the main problem of the alt media, all too content to sit back and let saviours do it for them. It hasn't worked, and it won't. But we have the solutions. We've created many solutions in THI, but the main one is the People's Club. THI and the People's Club was tasked to create the new system. The old one's failed. It's gone. And the key to THI is all take part. The TPC also. We can build a new way on all levels with the backing of the people. You know, I'm not asking you all to follow me. I'm asking you to be by my side and we all go forward together as one. And we can do that in the alt media. We can take the Anna von Reitz assemblies, the UNC assemblies, the National Liberty Alliance grand juries, Kevin Annett, and the THI state members into one new group under the People Club banner. Not because it's my group, because it's not my group. I'm just the guardian. The group belongs to the people. 5 separate groups helps no one. 5 groups together helps us all. And no one has to leave their main group to join or participate. And we don't need apps either. So AVR people can still carry on following AVR. But what this does, it creates a solid movement where it is about the people coming together, not divided as currently. Anna von Reitz, John Darash, Kim, Kevin and myself are not following mechanisms. You are not sheep. To go forward, we all become leaders, not just 5. Individual groups have never worked in the past and will not work now. And this is why, as stated in the very first show, we must think and act different. Go into your schools, workplaces, church or social gatherings and get people to donate to the TPC and show them the videos of how we are different and plan to move forward. All people, all colours, all as one. Imagine 20 to 30,000 people in each state, all operating and thinking in a better way for and by the people, with need not greed, caring and sharing, cooperative not co-pirate, all with the goal to improve each other and other people's lives. With 20 to 30,000 of like-minded people in 40 of the 50 states, we would have voting power as well. You don't like one candidate? Don't vote. If the other candidate won't improve our lives in that state, don't vote for them either. And if neither candidate is acceptable, we push forward our own candidate, the People's Club Party candidate. And with 20 to 30,000 in 40 out of the 50 states voting for a TPC candidate, we will then have our own TPC candidate in the government. One member wrote this: bloom where you're planted. Position yourself around the like-minded. Through combined thoughts, ideas, determination, we will be successful. Build it and they will show up. And it's up to us all to build it. We've made big strides this year with the TPC. Let's carry it on. With $1 from 1/6, or let's just say 1/10 of the American population. 30 million a month. You can imagine what we the people, without lobbyists, brown envelope people, and other people harvesting, can do with $30 million per month. That's 1 out of every 10 Americans. We won't need their stimulus checks, where it looks like an absolute begging bowl. These people, including the American people, I might add, seem to forget that the money that these government people have is not their money, it's our money. And it's the same with the trust. 130 million to bloody Israel, when Trump had just given 38 billion over 10 years. Let's build it. Something for you all to ponder on. We have spoken about the left and right hand path and the letter N in capital form. The left has the gate of no gate and no outward path, but the right does have the out gate. And this brings in the east and west gate, the left and west path of set, in which the sun sets, and the right and east path of which the sun rises. But then I pondered again this week about the earth tilt, and which way is the earth tilted. Well, currently it's all tilted to the west or the left when viewing from the sun. Well, Earth tilts one way, then the next. But what if it tilts towards the west gate all the time in the egg timer analogy? What is left is now right. But if the event horizon is close, and if it happens now, surely it will be a lot easier Are you sunset or sunrise? And whilst you ponder on that, a little light humour is the fact that the West Gate will be much easier to spot nowadays, as those going west are wearing masks. Go left and you are left with a or the saviour. Go right and decide the right path for you. From time to time, we have often included pieces that members have wrote, whether in emails, poems or chat comments. We've also included songs that some of the members wrote, one from Germany, I remember. And I pondered long and hard about this piece, given the background of accusations that have been thrown at me, of whether to include this piece or not. But this was not from me. This was from one of the members. And that piece was supported heavily and agreed to by many who were in the chat at the time, and so it becomes a collective thought process. And perhaps your voice should be heard on a wider scale. And this is what our members think and feel. In a country where free speech is becoming obsolete, we will carry on promoting it. It is your voice, and no one should take that away from you. So this is what was wrote. What a hard show this must have been for you, Thomas, all during such difficult times for you with your father and the backlashes regarding Kim and others. I am glad, though, that you did the show. I could hear the strength within you, and you are the truth, honour and integrity. I, as well as our special group, stand with and beside you. I am proud to be with you and part of THI. I am grateful to you, our admins and members. I have been disappointed regarding Kim, and I have held my tongue. I expected higher standards of the Guardian, the Trustee and the Eve. I see unresolved ego issues, and I still cannot fathom her ill treatment of you, and I was in the chat the day she thundered in attempting to humiliate you. It was childish and just ugly. I felt many emotions when she dumped THI to go start a new group with Tank, and none of what's transpired with her makes sense to me, but time will reveal all. Time will tell about Alan's statements. She said no funding for THI or the TPC. It's disturbing about the funding to BlackRock as well. I am seriously questioning her and her position, although I applaud the good things she did do. I hope she gets back on track and does inner work. I believe she lost her greatest ally, supporter and protector in you, and I'm so sorry that you've been dragged through it all from no fault of your own. That with Alan was a real shocker. I'm glad you exposed it, and you had every right to defend your character. Seems Alan has much jealousy, and who issues and used the classic projection. It's a real shame. What the hell is happening with all these people? They seem to be choosing the money lure and the left-hand path, and it seems the dark is claiming more souls. But yes, we will move forward, and you and THI are of and in the light, and have our hearts in the right places. Thank you, Thomas, for being who you are. We love you and we are with you, and love to all our members. That was written this week. My thanks to you all for the support for a very difficult time for me personally and also work-wise. You have spoken out loud now for all to hear. It is important you all have your own say, because at the end of the day, you are the voice. Final piece tonight is what we've witnessed over this year, in particular, the year the masks shed its final skin and we would see. It is and has been not a pretty picture. The divide and conquer programmes, as I've stated in previous shows, and received some criticism for saying so, is largely done by the people ourselves. And yes, we can blame the Illuminati, the cabal, the clowns or the government, but it's the people who implement the programmes. Look what has happened within our own alt media platform this year. Why would the cabal have to do anything when the people they target do so much damage to each other themselves? It's the old classic seducement programmes over being lured, status, titles, fame, ego and money. It's the classic fall game. But it is their fall, not ours. And that is the important thing to distance yourself from. It's all about observing, not absorbing. Before March this year and pre-masks, lockdowns, businesses and job losses, this planet's people were rising much in higher vibration. And many were starting to wake up to the illusion that was presented to us all. The key was the frequency was rising and the clowns were panicking as we had forecasted. The clowns were being frozen out. But then with the funding of the Fed in March, they suddenly had the funds to roll out the programmes they wanted to unfold, which was to reduce the frequency of the people and subsequently the planet. But what has unfolded since March and escalated since May, many are now seeing humanity being stalled or going in a low vibrational frequency and losing the plot. And that has gone beyond all the wildest expectations of the clown elites, or L-ites to give them their correct term. There can be many reasons given and finger pointing as to who is to blame, and you all have your own opinions on that without any further interjection from me. But despite all of that, it still hasn't changed our resolve within our group. And we can redouble our efforts to raise the frequency again. It hasn't changed anything within our group, or our plans, or our resolve. But what has changed is, despite all the lies and attacks, we all stuck together and gained an even stronger bond between us all. And go forward, with that in your hearts and not look back in anger. There is a new game happening amongst the people now, and their propensity for divide and conquer. It's called the frequency and spiritual envy game. Anyone who raises their frequency or evolves on a soul development level is now fair game for attack by low frequency, low vibrational, non-shadow or inner work people. They can no longer mask that anymore. And for those who have done their work, those people are easy to spot now from well more than a mile away. Observe, not absorb, is the key factor in it from all of our perspectives. Is it sad to see? Yeah. But this is your spiritual journey only. And on that level, it is a selfish exercise. Only you can do it. You cannot do it for others, and no one can do it for you either. The greatest friend you can have is yourself. Make peace and love with that. Then seek out like-minded and combine your frequencies. The highest frequency is love, and I love you all. Bye for now.